here's my ID. Okay, say hi.
Hi.
Okay. Sex trafficking in America. This speech is just meant to inform uh, how this crime became so prominent. Sex trafficking is flourishing in every corner of America, and millions of people go missing yearly. A lot of them don't get found by the police, so it's left to assume that many of them are caught up in the sex trade world. They never get back to their loved ones. They're just displaced, and so they're lost. This impacts everyone, as many cases go unreported. The three main points I'll be trying to make today is: who does sex trafficking affect, the consequences on our society today, and the preventative laws taken state to state to help these victims. Sex trafficking is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry that remains hidden in a criminal underworld. The victims can include any race, any gender. While many fall into this hidden crime world are women and children, it is now known today that a lot of men and boys are also being caught up. Trafficking doesn't necessarily mean to transport between two locations, so it's a very common misconception. But basically, the term is just meant to define anyone who is being coerced or lured or forced to perform sexual acts for money. There are many people in slavery today, more than ever at any other point in time. According to the BYU Journal of Public Law, about 14,500 to 17,500 are trafficked into the U.S. yearly from international borders. 80% of those people trafficked within the states were first sold into the sex trade world before the age of 18. It is commonly misunderstood that only women are trafficked, but there was a recent case in just Utah where nearly 60 teenage boys were found being trafficked by one trafficker alone. Certain demographics are targeted more than others, and that would include the impoverished individuals, victims of abuse and trauma. Many of them get their identities taken away from them. As soon as they're caught, they are shut out from the outside world, no communication. So their families are left to assume that they're missing and never to be heard from again. The mental and physical trauma of being trafficked does not only affect the individual, but the family and the loved ones left behind. The consequences on our society is damaging. The consequences would typically leave psychological issues, very long-term suicidal thoughts, depression, relationship issues, and PTSD. Happy endings are usually bleak for these victims, but whenever they are rescued, they are riddled with various mental issues and psychological symptoms. Being taken away at a very young age is traumatizing. Add being abused, drugged, daily raped. These traffickers make a profit off the victim while they're under complete emotional and physical control by them. Leaving the trauma unaddressed once they are rescued leaves them vulnerable for re-victimization. Mental health professionals working with these victims emphasize how critical trauma recovery is to repair their lives. Not only does the sex trafficking affect the individual, but also the family and the loved ones. Family is left to consider the unknown. Once a member has been taken, the traffickers want full control, so they tend to completely destroy one's identity and mentally break down their victims. Threatening family and their loved ones' lives, starvation, drug abuse, and rape are ways for victims to comply to get victims to comply and perform sexual acts for money. According to the psychological impact of human trafficking and sex slave worldwide article written by Leah Kaler, survivors of sex trafficking can and do heal, stating that former sex slaves tend to be great resources in the fight against human trafficking. They tend to be the best insight and have invaluable information to help these victims. Since the prevalence of this issue has reached amazing heights, many laws and regulations have been put forth to protect victims and prosecute traffickers. Many of these sex trafficking victims are jailed for prostitution while the trafficker gets away.